welcome or welcome back. I'm Jess. Let's talk about the best fiction books I read in 2022. Among the best books from 2022, I have Heartstopper by Alice Oseman, the first 4 volumes. This was really good. So this follows a pair of teenagers. One is openly gay and one is questioning, and he learns that he's bisexual. So this was a really sweet romance. I really liked it. I just wanted to give both of these boys a hug at multiple points. The Netflix show follows the first 2 books of the series, and I think I preferred the show a little bit more from the perspective of I thought the actors did such a good job bringing to life the characters, but also in the show we get to see more of Tao and their other friends, and I really liked expanding the story a little bit through that. Very sweet. Oh, another thing I really liked about this one, and maybe it's just that I tend to read more in the way of fantasy, but I really liked that they were teenagers dealing with teenager topics. This was not some parents are completely and totally missing in action. These kids are raising themselves and taking on villains, and also partying and drinking and all sorts of things that it just doesn't match up with my normal teenage experience, what I consider a normal teenage experience. Certainly wasn't my teenage experience to go out saving the world. My parents are totally missing and I have access to alcohol and drugs all the time. Like, they seemed normal. This next book, I think I really liked it because it reminded me of Heartstopper, but that is The Charm Offensive by Alice Cochrun. This was so sweet and fun and entertaining. This follows 2 men. One is a producer of a show that's basically like The Bachelor or Bachelorette. Our other male lead is an anxious man who doesn't date, and it is through being on this show and being around a bunch of women that he realizes that maybe he's not entirely straight. But it is so charming. I really liked this one. It's The Charm Offensive, so yeah, it should be charming, right? Definitely one of the best books I read last year. The next book is basically a hug in book form, and that is TJ Klune's The House in the Cerulean Sea. So I tend to read books blind, so when I read this one, I had no idea that it was a fantasy at all, and having the fantasy elements of this unfold as I'm reading it, I really enjoyed that experience. So our main characters here, we have a man who works for a government agency that essentially does home visits for foster care situations of magically gifted children, and he just goes to assess if the foster homes are in good shape or if they're not abiding by certain guidelines, and if they're not abiding by those guidelines, they might get shut down. So he is assigned to look at the foster home of a man who has all of these kids that their magical abilities are deemed very dangerous. He goes to see them, he gets to know them, and of course everyone just falls in love with each other because they're all just so sweet and I love them. I am really looking forward to reading more TJ Klune. This was absolutely a fantastic read, and you know what, it's summer. I would say this is a really good summer book. I feel like the island and the sea, yeah, I think it really fits in well with summer. My next book is actually the last book of a series, and that is Christmas Shopaholic by Sophie Kinsella. This is so fun. So our Shopaholic she's married, she's got a kid, she's living in a little town, her best friend works with her, life is great. Well, now she wants to get her husband the best Christmas present ever, and in classic Becky fashion, she is so completely over the top. I do recommend this whole series, but this was a really good book to round it all out. I do kind of hope that she continues, Sophie Kinsella, I hope she continues to write more Shopaholic books, but this did feel like an ending, so maybe she won't. But this was so fun, it was so sweet, and I definitely, it had me crying a little bit. Just the whole Shopaholic series is great, but this was really wonderful. All right, going back to fantasy, we have Sue Lynn Tan's Daughter of the Moon Goddess. So I really liked this one. I will say, however, it felt very much like fan fiction of my favorite sea drama, which is Ashes of Love. But if you don't want to sit through 60 some odd episodes, 1 hour long episodes, I can understand wanting to just read this book. You'll get basically the same story, just in a little bit tweaked, just a touch tweaked. But this was a good book. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good time. So in this, we have a young immortal. She's living in the heavenly realm, but she's also isolated, and not many people know she exists. Really just like 2 or 3 people know she exists at all. Everyone else is totally ignorant of her existence, and it seems like if other people know that she exists, there could be problems for her and her mother, the moon goddess. This was fun. Again, if you do not want to sit through 60 some odd hours of a Chinese drama, read this, or do both. Read this, but also watch Ashes of Love, because it's my favorite sea drama. It's the best one. All right, another young adult fantasy romance that I read was Axie Oh's The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. This one was also really good. This one, a young woman, her brother's girlfriend, for lack of a better word here, is going to be sacrificed to the god under the sea. And instead of allowing that sacrifice to go through, our girl here, the girl who fell beneath the sea, she sacrifices herself. She goes beneath the sea, she finds a completely different realm, and she ends up solving a mystery. I didn't think the mystery was all that mysterious, but it was still a good read. I had a good time. I really liked the ending. I thought that was very well done. Okay, next one on the list, we have Toshikazu Kawaguchi's Before the Coffee Gets Cold. So this is told in 4 kind of short stories, and the whole thing is about a novella length. Water. I am a dragon. The premise here is that in a little coffee shop, there is a seat where if you sit there and you drink a cup of coffee, you can time travel to any moment in that coffee shop and interact with someone who has been in that coffee shop too. So it's not, you can't just go anywhere. You are restricted to the coffee shop, and nothing you do will change the present or the past. So if you go back in time and you are talking with your ex-boyfriend, you guys will still break up. Like, that will not change if you are already broken up in the present when you go back in time. So like, I thought this was really sweet. It was really interesting. I liked the idea of time travel in this, that it was possible but had really no consequences for right now. It was almost more like a therapy device, kind of. At least the way we see people use it in the stories. They just have a chance to get closure on something. And that was, I thought that was really well done. So I'm looking forward to reading the sequel. Oh, okay, so this one has such an interesting urban fantasy setup, and that is, well, it's called Midnight Riot by Ben Aaronovitch, but it's part of the Rivers of London series. So this one follows a detective in London who sees a ghost one day, and he gets recruited into a special unit of the police force that only kind of deals with supernatural type problems. And some of what really stuck with me about this is just the various types of supernatural entities that exist in the world. When I think of gods and goddesses in a lot of different stories, they are kind of highbrow or like posh or just really cultured. But in this, gods and goddesses are just like, they're just like people. They're just different. They're just people. They can be whatever they want to be. They are not restricted to just being these like super elite beings. They can, you know, like noodling. I don't know, that's when you stick your hand in the river to like catch a fish. I don't know that that actually happens here, but I feel like there are some characters here that would totally go noodling, if I'm remembering that word correctly. Anyway, so this was really good. I liked it. It was pretty action-packed, I felt like, and it's also the start of a series, so I look forward to reading more. I read book 2 of a series, and that was Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn. I really liked it. I was surprised at the number of people that I follow their book reviews. I was surprised at the number of people that I normally follow who didn't care for it. I thought it was really well done. I think Tracy Deonn is a fabulous writer, and I think she does a really good job of weaving together some fairly disparate ideas into a cohesive story, and I am just blown away. I think that her first book, Legendborn, and then this one, Bloodmarked, I think they're both really, really good. I highly recommend them. So Legendborn, the first book, sets up this retelling almost of Arthurian legend, and the Knights of the Round Table, their souls are kind of tied to each other such that they're constantly being reborn in a sense. And those souls are tied to their lineage. For instance, Gawain, all of his descendants can carry on his soul and be imbued with his particular skill set or strength that he brought to the Knights of the Round Table. I just thought it was really interesting, but there are so many different ideas of magic here in the Legendborn series. Oh no, I'm not gonna say that because that was a spoiler. Anyway, Bloodmarked was really good. I thought it was a very good continuation of Legendborn and just a really good continuation of the world, and I am really looking forward to the next book. Another favorite from last year, Traci Chee's 1,000 Steps Into Night. I will read anything by this person. This was such a fun book and so well written. I really loved it. Some of the imagery of this book just still haunts my dreams. I love it. I will reread this book someday. Time. There are a lot of books on my list to read. I put them there. That's my own fault. But I do want to reread this one. So this follows a young woman who is the daughter of an innkeeper in a kind of failing town, and she is attacked by a demon, and this attack leads to her kind of developing an illness that she wants to resolve. So she goes on a journey. She finds a companion. It's really good. Highly recommend. The imagery, like I said, just has really stuck with me. Please read. The final 2 books are in a series, and the first of those 2 is my best book of 2022, best fiction book of 2022. So, first book is Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nghi Vo, and then the second is When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain. So it is the Empress of Salt and Fortune that was my favorite read of 2022. Nghi Vo wrote these 2 novellas, and they follow a cleric who is collecting stories. So in the Empress of Salt and Fortune, our cleric meets Rabbit, who is an old servant of the former Empress. And you learn about the Empress coming to this land from her own land, going into exile, and then also what she decides to do next. This was riveting. You had to pay attention. There was so much going on. Nothing was wasted. Such a good storytelling. Like, this was so good. Highly recommend. And then When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain, our cleric is now listening to the story of some tigers and learning what their truth is regarding a particular disputed history. I think this one was a more straightforward read than The Empress of Salt and Fortune, but no less entertaining. This was also really good, though obviously The Empress of Salt and Fortune was my favorite. So those were my favorite reads from 2022. There were a few others that I ended up not adding to this list. Oh well. Like, 2022 was not a bad reading year. I think that 2023 so far is turning out to be a slightly better reading year, especially this month. I'm looking forward to talking about my June reads. See you soon for the next one. Bye.